What you need,
That's not so good. We're not gonna have a strong relationship. Yeah, okay, great. So we're gonna tell you a little bit about the PLACE program and how that grew and the mission of that grew into what the center is, and it touches on everything that you're talking about, You know, we're gonna have another little breakout at the end and some questions at the end, but you can ask questions, stop me if something doesn't make sense. And then a couple other things. That this is a curriculum guide that we made, which is very rooted in like the equity lens, social justice, and it's meant for middle school, high school. The lessons can be expanded, shrunk, whatever you want.
Your copies of this?
They're on the flash drive. So the flash drive has the book on
Are you
it.
serious? Oh dear God.
Oh, you
You said it
stop.
wasn't on PLACE. We are loving you.
You stop.
I didn't know that was
Yeah,
flash
here.
drive. Are you really sharing this with us?
Yeah, so it's got the book on it.
That's what it's all about.
And then this is student work. So there's a bunch of student work in front of you, and also the student work is on the flash drive. And then there's actually letters from clients. So students do client-based work, which I'll talk about. So you can see what people in the city are saying about the student work. And it is all free, and we want this to be replicable because we think that teaching and learning this way is really, really important. So I'm going to tell you about the PLACE program real quick. So PLACE stands for, like Dan said, people leading across city environments, and it's something we've been doing for 8 years. It started really small, we've grown it to now. It's had students from 21 different high schools throughout the city. No inability to pay is not a barrier. We make sure anyone who wants to do it can do it, as long as they fill out the application. The book has been downloaded in a bunch of cities around the world, which has been great. And the most exciting part to me is that through these student projects, which I'll talk about, over 4,000 Portlanders who normally don't have a voice in civic processes have been engaged in civic processes, which is really, really exciting. It's been done by youth. It hasn't been done by me. None of this has been done by me. Well, that has been done by me, but this components haven't. So what PLACE is, it has three parts of the three components to the curriculum. The first is just understanding our community. That's the first thing. You've got to understand how your community came to be. We call Portland the city that works, but you know, what does that mean? And I think the question is essential is who's it working for? You know, and is it the same people that it's always worked for? And then what about the future? And so that's the equity lens there. Like, who is it working for? Who's it going to continue working for? And then, you know, examining that critically. And they learn that from talking to experts. I don't sit up there and lecture. We go out in the city, we meet with architects, we meet with activists, we meet with politicians, and they get to peek behind the curtain of the system because you can't change systems until you know the system. Right? So the second part is these student-led projects, here, and that's the last half of all the PLACE curriculum, and it's client-based, so meaning it's real world, it's not fictional, and there has to be the chance for a real impact. And so students do community outreach as part of these projects, they talk to experts, they design these plans, and everything is rooted in research. So the recommendations that they make have a lot of sense behind them, a lot of credibility behind them. And you can see, like, this was, you know, these documents were created in like 2 weeks, you know, with a group of 20 students. It's from all over the city. It's incredible what they can do if given like the structure to do it. And then the last thing is leadership training, and it's not about being the person who everybody follows. It's about understanding your strengths and weaknesses as you work within a team. We talk about teams a lot. So, you know, if you and I are working together on a project and I kind of know what my strengths and weaknesses are and I can sort of identify that in you, then maybe we can put that together to be the best team possible. And to me, that's what leadership should be when you're doing community work. And then the heart of that is what PLACE is all about. That's where we try to get to, yes?
With your leadership training, do you use a specific curriculum, or is it just conversations around like teams and like understanding yourself and how you?
We do some kind of fun stuff. Have you heard of the True Colors personality assessment? So we do that, and what I love about that is the True Colors is not just what you think of yourself and who you are, but it's how other people perceive you.
Okay.
So I'm an orange, which means that, you know, I have like big ideas and I go for it, and like blues might think I'm like irresponsible because I just go for it, you know. And so how, if I'm working in a team with a blue and they might perceive me as irresponsible, how do I work with that? So that's part of the curriculum. It's talking to people in leadership roles. That's really key, and different types of people in leadership roles, you know, not just people that look like the students.
Yeah.
And then putting them in positions to lead. So with these projects, we have these little teams that do research, and so everyone gets a chance to lead in some way. So you get to learn by doing. I'm just going to give you a couple examples of projects, have them here. This was done in an urban park with gang violence, facing gang violence for the City of Portland's Planning and Sustainability Bureau. And the students tried to understand how to make the park safer. And I wrote a great document for it. This was about how can there be bike share in the suburbs, is basically what it is. We have transit that goes out, but how can you have bike share out there so people can get that last mile, like to your school or to a hospital or whatever it might be. You're gonna hear more about this from a student in a second, but this was a very, very cool project in an urban farm setting, looking at youth food insecurity. This was also a great project in North Portland, historically black neighborhood that has, the city has decided to put the truck routes through the middle of this neighborhood. And so there's all these issues with increased asthma rates, and then not just that, anxiety from the sound. And so students looked at mitigating the health impacts of it, and they created some recommendations that the city has moved forward with. Last summer, the city came to us and said, we have all these public spaces, we're spending all this money on public spaces, young people don't go there, what do we do about it? So the youth created an app that we're hoping will someday come to market called Spot, where young people, it's kind of like a Yelp for public spaces. So young people can say, like, this is where we go, this is where we hang out, and then developers and planners on the back end can get the data and understand what makes spaces good for young people. How do we know that it works? I'm not like a great social scientist, so there's no entry survey, but I do have exit survey data. So I apologize about that, and I think the things to take from this are, one, that students enjoy it. They're willing to tell their friends about it, and they're learning a lot. We have a test after the first week of the PLACE program, do you know more than your parents about how the city works? And it's always yes. It's always yes, and that's really important. And then finally, if we're talking about our students being leaders in the world, whatever it is, I think it has to come down to being engaged citizens. And to me, it's not about service. No one wants to be somebody else's service, right? But but we want all students to be engaged, and there's a lot of ways to do that. And the data shows us that our students feel like they're more engaged, more likely to be engaged, which is
I'm just going to try and make quickly this program occurs right after the end of the school year, and it's hard. It's long days. It's a month that students are doing this, and that data at the end of it shows that they can engage in these things. A lot of kids are like, I'm not doing this. This is like, I've just finished school. I'm really tired. I'm not going to dive into this. But when they do it, you get a bit of that at the start that my parents wanted me to do something, or I felt like doing something. But by the end of it, they are so engaged in it, and they are long days. And they leave the program, and then they go home and they meet together to work on a presentation after hours. So they're putting in huge hours. So they really, once they get this sort of entryway into engaging with these issues, they really do go for it, despite the timing.
What's your school day?
8 to 3:15.
What's
The
the
best program?
place?
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
9 to 3.
93.
I was going to show you this video from a student, but I'm a little bit worried about time.
Oh, you can do it.
Okay, we can do it.
It's important, mate.
Says my boss. So we'll do it.
Hi, my name is Lizzie Medford, and I was a member of the 2010 Spring Place team. My group worked with a local urban farm called Zanger Farm, and it's out in southeast Portland, and the area of town it's in has a lot of issues, one of which is food security and having access to healthy food, enough healthy food. The Catlin students and I focused on the youth aspect of the project and figuring out what the youth wanted to see on the new property that the farm was getting. So we sent out 3,500 surveys to 12 different schools in the Portland area, and we got back 888 of those. And on those we asked not only about what the youth wanted to see on the new land that the farm was getting, but also we asked food security issues about how often they eat healthy food and if they feel that they have enough food. We used those surveys, and we also used information from focus groups that we held to produce a design that we thought reflected what the youth were after on the farm. And we found in that survey that 80% of the youth had a desire to grow their own food at home. So we were recommending that Zanger Farm focus on teaching kids how to produce their own food, prepare their own food, and preserve their own food. So those were the 3 P's that we focused on, that we suggested that Zanger also focus on. Because 53% of the students in that survey expressed that they only eat fresh fruits and vegetables sometimes. So by teaching kids how to cook their own food and grow their own food and preserve their own food, hopefully Zanger Farm will be able to improve the food security issue in that neighborhood. I personally learned a lot through this project. I learned a lot about communication and also presentation skills. Like I said before, we worked with Portland State University students, so we had to communicate with them over the phone and over email, and we had to keep each other updated on what was going on in the project. And I also had a chance to present our project to multiple large audiences, so I learned a lot of presentation skills that I know I'll use for the rest of my life and are really valuable skills. For me, the contrast between my everyday classes and Place was that Place really engaged me in my community and showed me some new communities within Portland that I didn't know about, and that was really exciting for me to find out about. Also, it was really empowering to know that I was making a difference in the lives of the youth that we were talking to, and that they had a genuine problem of not having enough healthy food, and I was doing my little part to try and improve that. Through the Place program, I found my voice to affect the communities around me, and I know that I will never forget my Place experience.
Yeah, so one thing that's exciting about that in terms of lasting impact is Zanger Farm still uses the data that these students collected in their annual report and for their board meetings and stuff, because they had no idea that the issue was that serious around there. So with the success of the Place program, it kind of spun off into this opportunity to get some space. Through working with multiple public agencies and private development firm, we were sort of granted 4 years of rent, not for this whole building, but it's 900 square feet here of basically ground level retail space in northeast Portland, which we'll talk about in a second. And this is a brand new development in a historically African American neighborhood on what was a vacant lot. And so you can imagine just by looking at it what it potentially represents in that neighborhood. So the neighborhood is right here, Catlin Gable is up over here. As I said, it's historically African American. This was like the only African American neighborhood in Oregon because of redlining and different types of policies that forced African Americans to live in a specific neighborhood.
In Oregon or in Portland?
In Oregon.
In Oregon.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how we roll. That's how we roll historically. And so, and now this neighborhood is really like, if any of you have seen Portlandia, it is kind of Portlandia. You know, it's got like hipster restaurants and, you know, really fancy condos and all of that. So there is serious community trauma in this neighborhood. People are being displaced, people are being moved out to East Portland. There's a reverse commute on Sundays back into church, right? And then what does it mean for African American communities to have a church not be the actual physical center of the community, right? So there is this displacement that is, it's real, it's tactile. You can feel it, you can see it if you care to look, right? And so the question came up, well, like, what the hell are you doing coming into this neighborhood? Your school off the hill, you know, privilege. How many of you have an experience of sort of the us versus them of private school, right? That's a thing. And so we felt that, but at the same time, the Place curriculum teaches about these issues, and the only way to learn how to do something different in the future is by examining the past and then trying to train people so they can do something different. So we had to figure out a different way of going in and having a center that just, like Dan said, in the colonial model of just plopping down and saying, here we are, we're gonna do our thing, because that wouldn't have worked. And how we know is that it wouldn't have worked is that Catlin Gable gave me 9 months to do a community engagement strategy. So I talked to every pastor, every local shop owner I could talk to. I talked to the residents, I talked to people who work for nonprofits, people that work with the African American community, people who work in this community, and I sat and I listened. And I owned what I represent. I'm a tall, white dude working for a private school up on the hill, coming into the neighborhood into a fancy building. I had to own that. And I think that's like the place to start. And then the second thing is just to listen. And so I did that for a long, long time while I was running the Place program. I did that for 9 months. And at first, I was hearing a lot of negativity. And then in September, then by May, it was definitely different because I had been listening. And so as people were passing me on to other people to talk to, I was getting closer to the heart of community trauma, but also people were being more open. And I think just through that process, the perception of our school started to change in this neighborhood. So what we decided to do was create a coalition model of co-governance by working with a few nonprofits that serve youth in that neighborhood and schools that serve youth in that neighborhood to really own this center together. That's what we decided to do. And so, traditionally, if this is something that an independent school has, whether it's a curriculum or a teacher or a space, the school puts their stamp on it and says this is ours, right? It's ours, we own it, we're proprietary, it's our thing. And then the school's being really generous, they'll say, we'll let you come hang out with us and give us time for service, we'll let you be partners with us kind of on our terms. I think that's very typical in a lot of our programs. It certainly has been in the PLACE program in the past. But what we decided to do is take us out of the middle and put us at the table. And what's been amazing is to see this group of nonprofits and other educational institutions come together and create the vision and the mission for the center. So
I was going to stop you there about this process. Be quick. I was still up on the hill. I was up at the school. George was having all these conversations. We were meeting weekly, and he was updating me about the community trauma. That this was a neighbourhood that had every right to feel the way it felt about the possibilities of us coming to the neighbourhood, and the irony of us going to talk about urban planning and youth engagement, community empowerment in a new building, right in the where there used to be a social centre for that community, right next door to one of the main churches in the area. So George is feeling that, conveying it to me, and then we had this conversation about, okay, what's the model we're going to use for inviting in partners? How are we going to put into action what you've heard? And at the beginning of the meeting, I could not see how we couldn't have some kind of control over this, that this is our school, our mission, and doing that. But as we had this conversation with the head of school, me and George in the room, it was about sort of an hour-long conversation. George proposed this model, and he said, we have to do this. We have to be an equal partner with everybody, have equal voices. We cannot have any semblance of being sort of primus inter pares. We can't be the one that's above everyone else in any way. We just can't do that. And so we heard that out, and in the end we decided, you're right, we have to do this. And it was probably one of the most impactful moments of my career, just this sudden realization, like we're about to do something really different here. I don't know any independent school that's done this. It's really risky, but it's the only way we can proceed. I still kind of get shivers down my spine, thinking of that moment where we went, this is what you got to do. This is what we've got to do. We've got to do the right thing here and not be that. We talked about being the colonial, descending down from the hill, and we talked about it a lot. But to actually do it and step back and do that was just really sort of hard to do as a school. We said, no, we got to do it. And it was a great moment in that office, and I remember that. And George made great progress since then.
yeah, so we're 9 months into the coalition process. We're only 2 months into the center being open, but the coalition has named it the center, meaning the center of the neighborhood, being centered in yourself. If this type of vision grows, this was the heart, the center of it. It was the heart of the African American neighborhood. And center stands for create. We want students to be creating in there, right? Engaging. This is not a place for wallflowers. You get in there and you engage with these topics. Notice what's around you. You walk into this neighborhood, you gotta understand how this neighborhood has changed. You gotta understand how people are feeling around you and about you. Teach. This isn't a place for teachers to be conveyors of knowledge. This is a place for us to teach each other, okay? Whether it's the community teaching us teaching the community, students teaching, whatever it might be, it's co-learning is the key. Empower, and hopefully all that will lead to people feeling empowered to have a voice and to say what they need to say and do what they need to do. And then finally remember the history. Every time students come in there, I make sure they remember the history of that neighborhood, not just the African American history, but there were Native American trade trails going through here. And if we don't remember the history, there's no way we can have impactful influence on the future. And they came up with the vision. They, meaning the coalition, I'm part of it. We came up with the vision and then the mission. And I love this, to join organizational forces. I think about that from an independent school perspective, to join educational forces, what that really means. It doesn't happen very often. And like Dan said, it's scary. It's scary. I don't have very much control. But the process of coming up with the name and the mission together is one of the highlights of my career. Because what we've done is we're creating this 850 square foot spot that is going to be the hub for youth empowerment engagement in the city of Portland, because we're bringing it together. So just really quickly, we're talking too much, I'm sorry.
This is good.
You know, we, all of the partners come together. If you're a young person, you want to take advantage of what's happening at the center, there'll be a website with a calendar. You can be like, look, I can go to Open Tutoring here, I can go to the Black United Funds, you know, community advocacy project here, I can do place there, and all of this will be happening at the center. And so, you know, another thing that we learned in this process is there's so much we don't know. Like, I'm good at place, I'm good at that. I'm not good at being Urban League's, you know, youth advocacy coordinator. But they do great stuff in the neighborhood. So we need to honor that, and that needs to be part of what we do if we're creating a hub.
So how much, George, how much of that is actually run by your staff, or you?
You know, these are kind of open slots in the day, right? And this is theoretical, but these are open slots in the day that, you know, I can work with teachers to try to bring this type of education into their classroom at the center.
So, but you said it's a co-learning space, it's a place where community partners gather. Can they use the?
Yes, so, you know, everyone's gonna get a key, all the coalition partners get a key, they get an access code.
So you keep a common calendar,
Uh-huh.
so that you, I mean, if you're bringing a classroom, if you're a teacher bringing a classroom there, or your students are gathering there, they know that there's gonna be space there.
He booked the time,
Yeah.
So how's it staffed? I mean, you know, the logistics are so integral to this work
Yeah.
and buy-in. So you haven't worked through that yet, right?
Yeah, we're working on it. I mean,
Okay.
we have systems in place that we're getting used to, and,
So you'll
but
share
there doesn't need to be, yeah, we share it, so there doesn't need, I don't need to be there all the time. These coalition partners have a key, they have an access code, and when they're signed up to use it, they use it. It's their space.
But you'll have certain programs, school programs with your students that are there in the calendar throughout
Yeah.
the year.
The joke we heard about George is basically running, he's like a startup person. He opens the doors, he locks the doors, he sets up the cable, he's sleeping there half the time. You live a couple blocks away, so any emergencies, George is going to be the one heading down there, and that's kind of just the way it's got to be this first year or so. So it's really like that kind of startup mentality where you're the guy. But
And I don't ever sleep there. There's no, I don't sleep there.
yeah.
So, since January 1st, it's been open-ish, you know, students did the interior design for it, students have done the painting, and this is a youth place. But just in the first few months, we have an after-school program where students are getting paid to be community conversation facilitators from all around the city, including our students. There was a police use of force panel that happened at the center, run by students. 50 people came, big discussion. All of the sixth graders from our school came during the day, and I worked with them on a gentrification kind of role play scenario, so they had to actually do the best they could to walk in the shoes of people that were experiencing this. And they did these I will remember sticky notes, and I wish that I had them here. They were very extremely powerful. There was an International Women's Day event. This right here, we have students from one of our partner high schools and coalition high schools, and then there's a K-5 public school that's part of our coalition, and they're going together and they're working all year on a community project at the center during school hours, so it's great. We have youth storytelling events that are happening there, run by another organization. So this is just the first couple months, and the coalition even hasn't really talked about collaboration in a meaningful way yet. So this is just the beginning of it's opening up new possibilities just by being so open to each other. This is a student who goes to one of our coalition schools who did the Place Summer program, and now he interns with me one day a week, and he's like the youth, he's a youth coordinator for the center, basically. So he's like my right-hand guy. We hang out, we text all the time. I follow his basketball team. And he's getting really involved with Catlin students, and so right there's an overlap of, you know, having these different experiences. And if we want students to be leaders, they have to work with people different from themselves towards something that's of benefit beyond themselves. I think it's really important. So he's going to talk about a project he's working on, just for 1 minute.
I'm Tyler White, and I'm a born and raised Portlander. I live in Northeast Portland, and Portland is everything to me. The I Love This Place project started with Jubilee Lopez as an independent study, and since then I'm the third person to take on this wonderful project. My interest in journalism, gentrification, and racial inequality all came together when I took on this project, and since has been my honor to allow these stories to challenge the systems in place, in return creating a better social environment than Portland. When you live in the most gentrified city in America, according to Governing Magazine's analysis of the 2013 American Community Survey, as the young people of the world, it is our duty to spread awareness to the unfair treatment of others based on their socioeconomic and, frankly, racial identification. That is what we are doing now. We are telling the stories of the people who do not usually have a voice. It is their stories that will transcend the problem at hand, the displacement of communities of color. We are the dedicated people who live in this neighborhood and dare to make a change that will last.
See now, community service means we're serving him, right? But a true civically engaged partnership, he tells me what to do. And that's the way it should be. He's a sophomore, so I'm gonna be working with him for the next 2 years. And you know, when you create these abilities for us to just sort of be at the same table together, whether it's in a classroom or a coalition, these are the types of things that emerge. And I think it's really, really important that we create that space. We still have a lot of questions. These are questions that we ask ourselves, I ask myself every single day. And I think if there's one thing to take away, it's maybe how do these questions impact the work that you're doing? And whether you work for a nonprofit or a school. Are the community partnerships authentic and mutually beneficial? That's huge. And the only way you know it's authentic is by building that relationship, sitting down, taking time to get to know them. You know, one email, one phone call is not going to do it. It takes time. But then what you get out of it is so worth it.
So even the notion of defining partnerships for people. At our school, we say we have a lot of partnerships, but we don't have a lot of partnerships. We have maybe 2. We have service. And so we come at it from a place of what can we give to you instead of what can we give to each other. So the partnership speaks to co-creating.
Absolutely.
And
We had someone in our administration, we were getting started, say, well, what do you mean authentic partnerships?
right,
Like they didn't even know,
Right.
so we had to define it.
Right.
This is complicated though, because, you know, the reality is that nonprofits and communities with nonprofits need resources, and resources are volunteer time. They're also physical resources and money. You know, food shelters can't stay open unless they have food. So that's one of the things that I struggle with as a director, as an advisor to programs, is how do we actually help? How do we help in authentic ways that are not ways that we're inventing, that create a lot more work for organizations that have very little staff, or that function mainly on volunteers?
I will say that, just to speak to that point, there is no doubt that it's something that you mentioned earlier, we leveraged our privilege to get access to this space. So the developer, the developing group, one was an alum and the other was a former board member, who came to us with this opportunity to apply for a grant that gave us access to this space, and in being a non-profit partner, we got access to this rent-free, basically we just pay the costs of it because we unlocked some money from the city through a partnership. We have that privilege as an independent school with strong alumni connections to the city who are in these positions of power in the city. But knowing that, how do we leverage that in a way to create these partnerships? So that was a really difficult question for us. Like, are we being part of the problem? And can we get past being part of the problem to become part of a more sort of inclusive conversation about what the future is going to look like, given that we are where we are right now? And so that we really wrestled with that for a long time. But there's no doubt. So for example, our school pays Georgie's salary.
Yeah.
So that is our big investment in this. We pay all the costs of keeping the lights on, paying for the cable, paying for all those kind of things. We do that. And yes, so that is we have the resources to do that. But there are other things. For example, I mean, we're hoping we might get like an Teach for America AmeriCorps position to work as an intern, where we will split the cost of paying that intern stipend between members for whatever they can kick into it. So there is some skin in the game for everybody, but it's going to be balanced based upon what you can afford to pay to be a genuine part of the coalition. Because we also do believe that to be a real part of the coalition, everybody has to contribute. Otherwise, you're shifting back to that old model. So it's really important that everyone is buying to the extent they can.
So I'm not suggesting that people don't volunteer. I'm saying I don't like service.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And I'm just saying it's so, you know, it's hard to understand what, what to do and what not to do, and how, and I think the approach and the language you use is incredibly important. But you know, the reality is there's so many nonprofit partners that reach out to schools of privilege, and they want access to our parents and families, and they need to stock the shelves. And you know, how do you respect what they need, at the same time build relationships that are not, where power doesn't come into play.
You know, so somebody just called our school recently and asked us that, did we have some people who wanted to walk for homeless to help raise some money for something, and I said, we're more than that. We are willing to support that, but we are willing to support that with an educational component. So how do you then come into our school and help our kids to understand why there is homelessness? For them to be able to be experiential in their learning. We can drop dollars in buckets every day, and it drives me crazy. But you don't have any understanding or any to lead to any making a change. Because if I just think you're homeless because you're homeless.
The way I describe that in terms of, I think the curricular piece is hugely important with that. If you have the way I talk about it, if you have a headache, I can give you Advil every single day,
Right.
or you and I can work together to figure out why you have a headache and then get rid of the headache altogether. So if you're doing something with homeless, then look at the issue of homelessness in your city. You know, have students learn about different parts of your city, and it is messy.
What I like, if I can jump in, is you guys are engaging one in a conversation around power, right? And what does power mean? And you're looking at it historically, but you're also looking at it honestly and candidly. Like you got mad respect for me when you're like, I came into this space understanding my place, and then I worked my way to gain their respect, right? To earn their respect. So I think that conversation is critical. And I think you're also having a conversation around knowledge, because I think part of the resources, part of the stuff is also teaching, right? But not just you guys coming with the resources, like you aren't doing just that, but maybe you're sharing and partnering, there's that partnership word again, with these communities who need that help and teaching them, how do you do this? How do you run your nonprofit better? Because we do have access to those resources via our board members and our families and this generational privilege that we carry. We can share that knowledge with you that you've been denied historically for so long. Like, I think that's the conversation that is being engaged in, it seems here, and it's all in multiple fronts, because you're looking at institutional issues, right? So it's not gonna be one quick fix, and you guys aren't going at it that way. You're going at it from many different ways. I think it's a wonderful idea that you're ceding power, right? You're not in control. You're a partner at the table, which says so much too. That makes sense to me, what's happening here. So I think, yeah.
Is it the only thing that you do? I mean, it's a huge thing and it's an amazing model for everyone, but how do you then deal with kind of the regular service requests that happen with schools like us? You're giving us a glimpse into one part of what you do, which has huge resource implications, like the PLACE program that students don't pay, some students don't pay for the program. I get that, but do you do other?
So in the upper school, we shifted our service learning model in response to student feedback. So a couple of years ago, we heard that we do service to tick off hours to get to graduation. Because we have 15 hours a year, we get it done.
Requirement.
We have a requirement, which is 12 hours off campus, 3 hours on campus.